All right, morning, citizens. I hope everyone is doing okay. I've got with me today Frankenstein Wrong Thinker, which some of you may remember, but because we're 56 and not 26, the technology has been foxing us for a bit. But we're going to try and do this. We're going to try and do this once a month for the next 6 or 7 months, because there will be something significant, or maybe not significant, happened in November. So anyway, hello Frank, how are you, mate?
Doing well, doing well, sir. We have some things happening in November, for better or for worse.
Yeah.
We do have some elections, whatever we want to call them.
Yeah.
And political chaos up into, and I'm sure happening afterwards, around November.
Yeah. Followed by an insurrection the following January, obviously. Yeah.
Oh, it's a new tradition, yes.
Yeah.
Under the second annual.
Yeah.
So yeah, insurrection point 2.0.
So we get a lot of we get a lot of news from the States. We remain obsessed by our younger cousins over there, and for good reason. But I thought it would be good to chat to you, because they have someone on the ground who can take the temperature of things a bit more than we can over here, because we get a scattergun approach of the stuff, of the news that we get.
Right.
So what is there any sort of feeling about what's going to be happening over the next 6 months? I mean, is there any particular things that you can think of?
I have heard, and this is in real life, co-workers, neighbors, a little bit of family. My family, I have a feeling when it comes to my family, I love them to death. I worry and think about politics enough for all of them, so we don't really talk too much about the ins and outs of politics. But just the general temperature, I hear a lot of talk about Trump. I hear a lot of talk about the JFK Jr., which is an interesting development. Just when it comes to other things I'm hearing on the street, it's going to be Trump, no matter. Trump is going to get the nomination, obviously, and whether or not Biden can even make it physically, mentally, to the election, I don't know. There has been rumbles of the Democrats wanting to go shoving Biden off to the side. The 25th Amendment, I think I'm no constitutionalist, but legally setting him off to the side to set somebody else up.
Yeah. There's always the vice president.
Yeah. I think they've been signaling pretty hard that it's not gonna be Kamala. Thank God. Right when you think things couldn't get any worse, if they were to put her up, and yet at the same time, a part of me wants to put her up, so we can just eviscerate her in front of public view. Those over the last 4 years, she's done a pretty good job of doing that herself. No, I've heard there's rumors. Okay, and a lot of what I see and hear and information I've cobbled together. There's two categories. There's in real life, talking to coworkers, strangers, and then there's going to be Twitter. There's going to be X and social media. And I'll try to differentiate the two, though there is going to be quite a bit of overlap. If we want to talk about who's getting nominated, the Democrats, there's rumors of a Gavin Newsom from California. I believe he's the governor of California right now.
Yeah.
And he's made the rounds media-wise. talking to certain people, certain people. I'm not very familiar with the left-leaning side of media. I try to try to avoid them as much as possible. But he's made the rounds of rumors they might set up Gavin Newsom as the next Democratic nominee. Who else? Michelle Obama. I've heard rumors of that.
It gets better and better, doesn't it?
I know. Well, there's stark evidence that really the whole Biden regime has actually been Obama in the background pulling strings. Wouldn't surprise me. They were in the White House together, and I wouldn't doubt that at all right now. But let's talk let's talk Robert F. Kennedy Jr. though, because
I was going to ask you about him actually, because did he not make some overtures to the Libertarian Party?
Yes,
I know is your,
and yes, I am a libertarian. God bless me. But he has publicly made overtures saying that he might be seeking the Libertarian ticket. The chairman of the Libertarian Party has also put out a video saying, it was funny because she never mentioned him by name. She didn't mention anybody by name. And she said that we welcome any and all candidates that would want to come to the convention and see and leave it up to our electorate. She goes, I can't endorse she can't endorse any one particular candidate, but all are welcome if you want to come to the convention. And they've made a point, and this is a gutsy move on the LP's part. They've moved their headquarters to DC,
right,
into the den of thieves.
From where?
That's a really good question. Probably Los Angeles.
Okay.
But don't hold me to that. I'm not sure. This last year or two, actually pre-COVID, so 3 years now. 4? Good Lord. Anyway,
84.
Last couple of years, I've only been. It's crazy how time. Anyway, I've only been paying close attention to the inner workings of the Libertarian Party as a political unit. So, but yeah, they made it a point to move all their stuff to that's the national headquarters of the Libertarian. Of course, every state has their own. Anyway, so the chairwoman says, whoever wants to come to our convention and throw their name in the hat, we'll go from there. It's going to be up to the delegates. It's going to be up to the they call them delegates. And, maybe you'll get voted in or maybe not. And I go back and forth with him because he's not a libertarian. But
no, he's not easy.
He shares 60-70% of what I consider is just core value to even smell a little bit like a libertarian. He's more than halfway there. But he's still shilling for Israel, and God bless Israel. I hope they get their act together, and I hope they quit killing people, and I hope the Hezbollah quits killing people too. I don't want anybody killing anybody. But he has already he's vociferously backed Israel way too often for my taste. Okay, but here's where I go back and forth when it comes to RFK, is it would be instant name recognition, and instant ballot access. If you get 5%, I should know this better. Something about 5% on polls. Is it polls or something? Anyway, I've people smarter than me that know more about all this than me have already said that if Kennedy does get the nomination from the Libertarian Party, he would have automatic ballot access with all 50 states, which is something the LP has only done once or twice in their 50-something year lifetime. So, which would be nice. But see, at the same time, we've done this before with other candidates that had some name recognition, but they were not libertarians. And the whole reason that the Mises takeover, Mises was a small caucus, it's a pretty big caucus now, it took over the Libertarian Party, was to drag the LP back to its core values, anti-war, property rights, just the usual set of suspects when it comes to individual rights. And I've completely lost my point. Anyway, so it would seem antithetical. Here we go. I'm trying to pull it together here as I caffeinate up more. It would seem antithetical if they were to bring in a non-libertarian for their presidential candidate. Now, on top of that, we all know that no matter who the LP puts up, they might make a little bit of noise in the selection. I'm sorry, the election, but they're not going to win. I'm sorry. There's no way that the Republicans and the Democrats, the uniparty, is going to. That's why they've been fighting them for ballot access all these years anyway, because they know if there's a third leg of that stool of government to keep them honest, they're going to have to be honest, and they're not going to allow that one way or another. They keep in New York, Larry Sharp, an incredibly smart man, very good libertarian. As he's from New York, he's tried time and time again to become governor of New York, and they keep upping the amount of signatures to get on the ballot, or money that you have to lay down, which is wrong in my opinion. You shouldn't have to pay to be able to get your name on a ballot. But they keep changing the rules on him to make it tougher and tougher for him to possibly get elected. So the Kennedy thing, I haven't made my mind up, because I can see the advantage, I can see the pros and cons of either side.
Yeah. I mean, I've been impressed by him generally. But like you say, he isn't a libertarian. He's a man of the left, isn't he? Generally speaking, very charismatic. I'll give him that. The man can talk, even with the whatever he's got going on with his voice, and he makes a lot of sense more often than not. But he's used to being, not really an outsider because he's a Kennedy, but he's used to being an outsider when he's battling sort of corporate interests, and he's won quite a lot of times, hasn't he?
And that's just it.
So he's kind of a winner, isn't he?
Yeah. He's a walking contradiction, because he's a Kennedy, and that's that's one of the oldest, most powerful Democratic families, for the last 100 or so years. But he's butted his head up against some of the right people, in my opinion. He's gone against the grain, and I like that. So,
I mean, I thought he was quite. There's three things that I was very pleased to hear him say. Is that on day one he's going to pardon Julian Assange, and who's currently rotting away in Belmarsh prison in London.
Right. Good.
And Edward Snowden.
And Assange. Okay. Good.
And he also said, and this isn't a libertarian thing, this is kind of almost like a socialist thing, but but to give it that label is not really fair. He was talking about making it so that Americans can get 3% mortgages, and so that residential properties can be bought by Americans rather than bought by BlackRock.
Right.
I think that.
Pretty authoritarian there, because he would have to. I wouldn't know what kind of strings he would have to pull to get a 3%. For I'm no economist, so I'm a blue collar guy. So, but yeah, that sounds pretty authoritarian. Though the benefits would be obvious, that the younger generation, that I hear them complain more about that than anything, that they can't live the American dream of owning their own house. So,
But we're having the same, we're having the same problem over here, and that the when Margaret Thatcher was in power, she had a phrase that she said she wanted Britain to be a property owning democracy, and
Wow.
she had some, I have some issues with her and her legacy, but that isn't one of them, and
Yeah.
see, one of the things she did, we have state-sponsored housing, we call it council housing over here.
Okay.
I suppose maybe similar to your project, I guess, maybe.
We call them Section 8.
Oh, okay, right, okay.
Yep.
But what
Yep.
she did was that she allowed people, because people would live in a council house for a sort of not a peppercorn rent, but a cheap rent. That's how you could do it. So you didn't have to get a mortgage. So you never owned a house, but you got rights for being a renter and that sort of thing. So it was pretty secure. If you got a council house, you could be in it for the rest of your life if you wanted to be. But she did this thing where she gave people the right to buy their council houses, and so they got them at a knockdown price.
Yeah.
Now, you see, I think generally that was a very good thing to do, because it enabled people to become property owners.
Okay.
The downside of that, of course, is they sold all the housing stock, and they didn't buy any new stuff. They didn't build any new stuff for decades. For decades, we've built enough houses.
Yeah.
Which is why housing is so expensive here. So the people who were able to sell their council houses, it was very good for them. But a lot of some of them, of course, just immediately flipped them for an instant profit to big landowners, and they snapped it all up,
Right. So, and they started collecting.
Yeah. So you got that. But so, and I do think that what you were saying about the American dream, that you're not allowed, you can't do the American dream anymore. In a similar way, if there was such a thing, you can't do the British dream either, because houses are just too expensive. I mean, and some time ago, this is probably 10 years ago. I mean, the average price of a house in the UK, this is probably 10 years ago, was £250,000. And the average salary was 25,000. And if you can borrow up to 3.5 times your salary, you can only buy a house that's worth £87,000, £87,000, rather than. So there's been a disconnect going on like that for a long time. And of course, you've got a split in society, because all the people who've got property, which I have to include myself in that, you think, oh, we're okay because I've got property. But everybody else who hasn't, fuck them, and of course all those people that haven't include my children and everybody else's children, so it's a real problem, but but you've been having I keep hearing things about you're having problems with the cost of living as well over there.
Our glorious leader was bragging at his State of the Union address that he's got inflation down 3%. Now, inflation isn't to 3%. It went from about 11 to 8.
Yeah.
But he's not going to mention that. He's just going to say 3% because that's the small number.
Yeah.
And, and hopefully the NPCs, the useful idiots out there, will only notice what he said and not really break down the math. Yes. Yeah, we're talking $4 loaves of bread.
What did it used to be?
In recent memory, 5 years ago, you could buy the really cheap stuff. You could buy for $1.25.
Right.
$1.50 for a good it's a loaf of bread. Technically, it's not the best. If you really wanted to splurge, you could spend 2 or 3. But your typical average loaf of bread is $3-4 now. Gas is leveled off at around $3 an hour, which really angers me, because we have so much oil and natural gas and all that good stuff right under our feet. With fracking and all the technology we have at our fingertips now, we probably have more fossil fuels under our feet than Saudi Arabia, but we're not allowed to get to it. We got environmentalists and the federal government in general not letting us access half of it. And we should be, there's no reason why any American coast to coast should have to pay for more than, in my opinion, more than $1 a gallon, because it's so plentiful. Because it's so plentiful, we just can't get to it, and what we can get to is taxed to no end. I haven't done a lot of research. Years ago, I looked into it a little bit, that almost half of the price of a gallon of gas is taxes, local,
Yeah.
state, and federal tax. You know, so
Yeah.
and
It's the
that's
same here.
half the reason why our economy has always been booming over the last 50, 100 years was cheap energy, was oil and gas, and that's why we've done so well. But yeah,
It
the
doesn't seem as
economy.
if you can have. It doesn't seem as if you can have a successful economy without cheap energy.
Thank you.
From what I've
Thank
read, it
you.
doesn't seem as if that's possible. You know.
Right. And why push unsustainable, renewable energies? And I'm, in Texas, at one time, Texas had the world's largest wind farm. I know this because a lot of my friends, I used to live in Texas. A lot of my friends left perfectly good, they left the oil fields, a lot of them did, to go build these big windmills.
Right.
Which is a huge mistake, because the oil fields are still working and the wind farms aren't. They break down, and when they went from working on the oil fields making really good money to making more money just to build these windmills, they didn't realize that they really only needed to work for a year or so, and then after they were built, they were all fired. They weren't kept on to maintain or work on them after that. It was strictly a temporary job. So, yeah, and half those windmills aren't even working now. They picked a really good part of the country. If you ever wanted to do a wind farm, it is really windy all through West Texas, and that made a lot of sense. And of course, the ranchers and the farmers there, they got paid off. They said, "Oh yeah, well, the government came to them and said, well, we'll pay you X amount of money to let us build this on your farm," and it was all for naught. Half of them don't work now, from what I hear, and it was just a boondoggle from the get-go. I'm all for innovation and trying new things, but these don't work.
It does seem to be, with regard to renewables, and I hate to say it, because I was quite sort of enthusiastic about them to begin with. And I worked with a guy who liked he was very enthusiastic about putting up solar panels on people's houses and stuff. And I was enthusiastic and thought this was, at least part of the solution. But it does seem now that, and I'm not saying this as an excuse to do nothing, but it does seem to be almost everything that we do with regard to renewable energy ends up actually being worse than what we did before.
Yeah.
I mean, for instance, I saw a report the other day that said, and I don't know the details of it, but I read the headline of it, is that EVs are very much heavier than normal cars.
Yes.
Yeah. Because of all the batteries. And so what ends up happening is that they wear out their tires more quickly.
Yeah.
And so you get all these particulates off the tires. And so if you factor that into the emissions, that over a lifetime of stuff, so this report said that the emissions from EVs, taking everything into consideration, it is worse than a normal petrol or diesel car.
Exactly. And when they go to charge these EVs up, in fact, okay, we're about the same age. I remember back in the day, in late 70s, 80s, early 90s. Well, really, the 70s was the age of the muscle car. Chevelles and Monte Carlos and big V8s. And I'm not much of a car guy, but if I'm outside and I hear, I'm turning my head and saying, okay, what's that? Anyway, I guess it's a genetic guy thing. Anyway, I heard a commercial for the Mustang electric vehicle.
It's,
Mustang, man.
yeah.
So
The
anyway,
only thing that's Mustang about that is the name and the rear lights.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Because we get them over
It's
here too.
ridiculous because you take your EV and you go charge it up. Okay, well that charging station is hooked to the electrical grid that more than
Yeah.
likely is going to either a coal plant or it's going to it's
Natural
still
gas or
on the
something.
grid that supposedly is throwing carbon in the air. And so
Mm.
you're not doing anything. On top of that, you mentioned that I'd also heard that EVs were incredibly heavy. Nope, you there? Okay, you blinked out for a second. If they're incredibly, if they are incredibly heavy, they'll wear the tires out and they'll wear the roads out more.
Mm.
And I don't know about I don't know about there. Are you still there?
I'm still here. I'm still
Okay.
here.
All right. All right.
Yeah.
I'll act like that's not happening at all. Um,
Okay.
and we have road construction everywhere. I'm in the deep south, and I still have friends out west, and family, and they're complaining about every road and highways getting retooled or there's road construction everywhere. Well, you'd set an entire, even a good portion of the population with these incredibly heavy, cars is just going to tear the roads up even more. Um,
It makes you
Now, and
wonder
if
if it's
anybody,
not
if
part
we
of the
want to
plan,
talk
doesn't it?
energy, if anybody is really serious about, greenhouse gases or whatever they're calling it these days, they need to be, we need to build more nuclear reactors because that is the cleanest, um, most efficient form of energy that we have. But no, that's not permissible because everybody's seen the China syndrome too many times.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. 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 I've been a proponent of for my own, basic understanding of it. I mean, I've been a proponent of nuclear energy for a long, long time.
yep,
And of course, it started to go. Of course, the China syndrome was 3 Mile Island, wasn't it? It was 1979,
yep.
wasn't it?
Yeah,
And
that was what it was
yeah,
patterned on. It didn't take it verbatim, but yeah, they used the 3 Mile Island to build a scare tactic movie off of it. Yes.
yeah, and so that was the 80s, and of course that's when the doldrums in the nuclear industry started happening. Of
Yep.
course, during that, and then of course we had Chernobyl in 1986 as well. So they, it's strange enough because so many of our countries are, in the so-called rich West are, so similar in the way that they're approaching things with renewables and trans rights and open borders and all this crap.
Yep.
But occasionally you'll find some outlier, and the outlier with regards to nuclear power is France.
I've
Now,
heard
France
that.
France is about 80% of their power is nuclear. In fact,
Okay.
the
Good.
the French company, the French company EDF is running quite a number of our, you know, nuclear power stations. So you do get this, and of course Germany has been shutting down all their power stations, and then
Oh,
when they,
the mighty have fallen because they used to
yeah,
be the superpower. They used to kind of be the big guy on the block in Europe for a while, right?
well, for a long time, yeah, for a long time, yeah, but at least since they got back on their feet in the 50s, but I don't know what's going to happen now, although I have heard that they've been what have they been doing?
They've been opening up their coal plant.
Clearing wind turbines so they can do an open cast mine again. So
Yeah, yeah. Which,
so we end up,
okay, you shouldn't have shut your old coal mines down to begin with if that's what you're going to end up with. You know,
yeah,
and I have no problem if you want to upgrade from coal to liquid natural gas. There's all kinds of forms of energy out there. Um, but yeah, they've gone full circle. Well, they've actually kind of gone full circle and then down, in my opinion. You know, um, if you want to talk nuclear energy, and I'll talk your ear off about it because I've looked into a little bit of it. They've got, I think they're calling it the fourth gen nuclear power plants, where they can they can literally on the back of an 18-wheeler bring you a nuclear power plant and have it set up and running in 3 months. That would power a small neighborhood. It wouldn't power an entire city or anything like that. And it would be high-paying jobs. They call them micro reactors, and that's an incredibly great idea.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I know that Rolls-Royce is embarking on this thing called they call them small modular reactors. And it's not quite a 3-month thing, and I think it's part of the bureaucratic regulatory framework that we're sort of imprisoned by over here. Means that it's not going to be in 3 months, but it will be in the next 10 years, But
right.
I mean, one of the sort of ridiculous things that happened is that when we had a coalition government in the 2000s. We had a coalition government between the Conservative Party and our third party called the Lib Dems and Liberal Democrats. And the head of the Liberal Democrats, who became Deputy Prime Minister, was a guy called Nick Clegg. And, this clip video has been doing the rounds. And he was saying that they didn't want to give any go ahead for nuclear power. This was in 2010. They don't want to get any go ahead for nuclear power because it'd be at least 10 years before it would come online.
Okay.
And that was 14 years ago. That was 14 years ago. And so we now don't have hardly any decent energy. We're blowing up our own power stations.
Yeah.
And Nick, do you know what Nick Clegg's doing?
What?
Nick Clegg is very high up in Facebook now, earning $15 million a year in San Francisco. So he's not doing too bad, Right. Meanwhile, we don't have any reliable energy any longer.
Yeah.
So
and you wonder why people are losing. And you wonder why people are losing faith in the so-called elite. Our aristocracy has failed us again and again and again. So. Yeah.
Do you think? See, I was out last night at a very rare social gathering. Don't go out very much, and it's a problem because it means I don't necessarily get to talk to people about this stuff, and you get sort of silos in your online thing, and the groups that I go to of people who are like minds. And I was talking to this guy. He was a nice fella. He was a nice enough fella, and he was just talking about, grumbling about the current government, which is completely reasonable because our current government is the shittiest one we've ever had. But it's not actually shit as the one we're going to get next time.
Oh, God,
because the Labour Party, it sounds like, are going to get in next time, the left-wing party. And he was making all sorts of cogent complaints against the Conservative Party, which, I fully understand. But he seemed to think that having the Labour Party in next time, who are almost exactly the same as the Conservative Party, won't make any difference at all. It won't make any difference at all, And I found it because he wasn't an idiot, but I just thought, why do you think that? Why do you think that having somebody with a red rosette is any different to having somebody with a blue rosette? But he seemed to, and this is where I sometimes wonder, and what you've said to me in the past is that, are we taking all this stuff a bit too seriously, and maybe it isn't as bad as we all think it is, and it's very hard to argue that, because to know what the answer to that is, because you only know what you know, don't you, and you don't know what you don't know,
right?
You sort of
right.
So because because the problem as I see it, and I think you've alluded to this in the sort of uniparty, is that there's so many people, the great majority of people out there, just think when they hate their own government enough, they'll just vote in the other side, which is basically just voting in the other side of the same uniparty. So nothing really will change.
Right, right. Because it's a cabal,
Yeah.
It's just there. it's a big club and you're not part of it, and you're not invited to the party. One thing I will give you Brits an advantage over us Americans. At least you'll have more than two parties. Now, mind you, in America, there's actually about 8 or 9 political parties out there. 2 of them are the only viable right now, though.
Yeah.
So,
but there's 2 viable ones here.
What's that?
There's only 2 viable ones here. I mean, the fact that the Lib Dems got into coalition with the Conservative Party that happens exceedingly rarely. And they were absolutely outmaneuvered by the Conservative Party, because what happened was that they came in and they were seen as being a bit of a break on the right-wing Tories. That's what they were seen as. But the Tories managed to outmaneuver them completely, because one of the Lib Dems election promises was that they wouldn't make people pay for higher education, because up until then, higher education, university, was basically free up to undergraduate level. Not if you took a master's or something, but so you had the boomers and people like that, and also older Gen X's like myself. They got free university education, basically, which is a big thing. And the Lib Dems came in. That was one of their election promises. And then when they got into coalition, because Labour were more important, because Conservatives were more important than Labour at the time, they were able to negotiate with the Lib Dems, and they basically negotiated with the Lib Dems, saying, well, you can come into coalition with us if you abandon your policy about. And so they completely abandoned it, and suddenly it was all university now costs £9,000 a year, £27,000 for the whole thing, and of course their credibility was absolutely shot after that. And so, come the next election, they were kicked out completely, and they went from sort of 35 MPs down to 8.
Okay.
So we have a unit party as at least as entrenched as yours. It's
people have to come to the realization here in America, at least. I wish it would be a worldwide thing. Nobody is going to come and save you. Superman is not on his way. There's
no voting our way out of this, is there?
No, there's vote harder. No, that's not going to work. It probably never has worked. You have to work locally. In fact, I'm glad I remembered this. You had put a video out earlier about asking for 100 good men and to help out locally. So if somebody gets in trouble, you can, call a bunch of people and have X amount of men at their doorstep at the drop of a hat. How has that been going? Because that sounds like a perfect example of what needs to happen.
Yeah, I mean, it's non-existent. I mean, people are not ready to make that commitment yet. I mean, I had 3 or 4 people who replied, which was nice, but it's nothing. But and of course, I had asked something similar a couple of years ago and got a pretty pathetic response as well. But it's because people they're not ready to make that jump yet, because what that means is that you end up having to go into direct and open opposition to the regime, to establishment, to law and order, and I understand that people are not ready to do that yet. But the trouble is that I think that time is coming, and when it does come, if it doesn't come sooner rather than later, it could get very, very ugly. And because we have the similar problem as you do, a completely open southern border. I mean, you've got a 2,500 mile border to defend, or whatever it is. We're an island. No. We're an island, and they still can't fucking stop them.
Right.
And it's not because they can't stop them, because they don't want to.
Right. There's no will to it. They could.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, in the US, that there was a wall, but even without the wall, if the political will was there to stop it, could stop it overnight. It's not as if the state is not powerful enough to deal with it. It's just that there are people who want this to happen.
Right. No, I hear exactly what you're saying. The people aren't hurting enough. They're not angry enough. They're not in that mindset yet to really step up. I'll dovetail it with what you said. The state is definitely powerful enough. Do you remember when I'm going to butcher his name, the emperor of China, not the emperor, whatever he is, Xi Jinping, went to San Francisco a month or so ago, and miraculously, all the human feces and all the homelessness and all the ugliness went away when he came to visit overnight. Bam. And I really thought that would be kind of a come to Jesus moment for some people to show, okay, they could enforce the law. They could keep things clean if they want to, but they're choosing not to because the U.S. citizen isn't as important as the leader of a foreign nation.
Yeah.
And that right there should have, if I was a local in San Francisco, I would hit the roof,
Mm-hmm.
And there was a single protest.
Are they back? Is all the homeless back now?
Are
all the homeless encampments and all the tents, are they all back now?
Yep. The very next day. Yeah.
For fuck's sake.
I know. Do you know of there's a poop finding app for San Francisco, so you know where to avoid what streets. And this is, and I went to San Francisco as a kid. I was about 19, and it was beautiful. And this is way back in the day. It was a gorgeous. I drove across the Golden Gate Bridge, and it was an incredible, thriving city. Not anymore. Like I said,
I mean, it is astonishing. I mean, it is, particularly as America, has been the richest country in the world for so long, and this has happened. I don't know. I mean, do you remember when Mike Pence was doing? He was trying to become president, in the primaries or what it was. And they were talking to him about, somebody was asking questions about, Americans being unemployed or whatever it is. And do you remember he said, that's not my concern?
Yeah. Because they were talking about the Ukraine war, right?
Yeah.
And he was going banging on about that. And he's like, well, what about, something about the economy or something? Well, that's not my concern. They're like, oh, yeah. We
don't have any hope with these people. We don't have any hope because their allegiances are elsewhere.
Yeah.
And it's hard to know why that is. I mean, we all have all our ideas as to what it is. Agenda 30. And smart cities, and and eating bugs and all the rest of it. We've got all these theories, they're not provable. That's the nature of conspiracy theories, isn't it? They're neither provable or disprovable, are they?
Right.
Most of it is circumstantial evidence, isn't it? And you have to look towards people's motives. But that thing with how they managed to clean up San Francisco over a weekend, and then what? Do you know that? Because that's Gavin Newsom, isn't it? That's Gavin Newsom. I mean, what on earth is going through his head? I mean,
he doesn't care. He does not care.
Yeah.
He keeps it
obvious. He does. I suppose it's obvious he doesn't care, but you sort of still think, well, these people are still human beings. But I don't know. Maybe that's me being naive. I don't know.
No, I would hope he has a conscience, but I highly suspect he doesn't. He's getting paid off by he's keeping his constituents he's worrying about are his lobbyists and his corporate masters, so to speak. That's who he worries about keeping happy. And all he's got to do is if there's any kind of rumbling from the public, all he's got to say is, okay, we're gonna give away free cars or something like that. We'll throw the public a bone of some sort, and that'll shut him up long enough so he gets reelected. There's been multiple recall attempts to get him out of office, and they failed miserably because they've got the infrastructure and they've got the organization to squash anything that might come up the pike. Let's say Larry Elder, I think was his name, a very articulate older gentleman that tried to get him booted out of office, and he tried to run for governor. And he I think he might have gotten 12% of the vote, and that was it. So
the gatekeepers are keeping everybody viable out, aren't they?
And the next is going to be the internet, because really that's the last venue, that's our last escape hatch, so to speak, of information that isn't already curated through the filters of corporate, of the corporations and of the government. So
we might have to go back to pamphleteering,
smoke signals or carrier pigeons or something, I don't know.
Because I mean, that is roughly what that is supposed, that is essentially what I do when I do my stall, when I do the anti-cashless society thing, because you just got leaflets and you hand them out to people and you talk to people face to face, and I've got to do more of that, and I've had a very difficult couple of months and I haven't done it, but as the weather starts to get better, I'm going to pick it up again, because it really is you'd be surprised how many people agree with you, but there are people who they just ignore you, and that's fine if they want to, that's fine. And there are people that you can give them a leaflet and they'll sort of take it in a bad tempered way, and then 10 minutes later you see them come back the other way and they're reading it. So that's quite good. Then you get the people who are on your side anyway, and they're nice to talk to. It's nice to talk to those people, but the most rewarding people are the people who you're opening their eyes to it.
They're doing a 180.
Oh, I didn't realize that. And this whole idea of a programmable currency, and and I tell them endlessly about the Canadian truckers, what's happened to them, and it's astonishing how little most people know. This is the thing, and I'm not saying that all of our information on our side is correct. It isn't, and there'll be lots of bullshit and stuff. But the thing is that what we're getting is stuff which other people believe is important, so they're exposing it. So some of it may be exaggerated. Some people may go down a rabbit hole that they shouldn't go down. But accumulatively, it's getting our news from Twitter and YouTube is actually better than watching the television, isn't it?
There's a number
as imperfect as that is,
between Joe Rogan and I still, on occasion, I'll still watch Timcast, and there's a handful of independents that I'll listen to, that I'll get my information from. Nobody's the presidential election. I'll watch it. I'll pay attention. It's going to be unavoidable anyway. But I'm not going to hang an iota of hope on any of it, really. It's going to be interesting with Kennedy in there. He as of today, he's running as an independent.
Is he? Okay.
Whether he wants to, it's entirely up to the LP, the Libertarian Party itself, and the delegates. And I think it's in about 2 months is when they're going to have their convention, whether or not he wants to throw his hat in there or not.
So what's it at the moment? Is it that he's now officially not a Democrat?
Right.
Yeah, okay. But if the Libertarian Party maybe wanted to pick him up,
right?
I suppose. Well, it's got to be. They've both got to agree, haven't they? But
right.
So there's an option for him. I mean, that would be quite a coup, wouldn't it, if the Libertarian Party carried it? Because, like you say, he's very well known, isn't he?
he's got the name recognition, better recognition than a Justin Amash or some other guys that we've toyed around with to represent us. He's not a libertarian though, man. You know, he's got a huge socialist leanings to him, and but he's articulate and he's charismatic. And I'm just going to have to leave that up to the delegates and at the convention.
And he does win against the odds, doesn't he?
Yeah.
He's won a lot of money and stuff. So.
And he's got a huge coffer to draw from too. So you know, he's not going to have to pander to the donors. He's kind of like Trump is. He doesn't have to have hat in hand to the donors.
I mean, I'm just assuming that. Being a Kennedy, he is, independently wealthy. I'm assuming he is. I mean, I don't know how wealthy. I mean, I often wonder why you have to be so rich to be a political candidate. I mean, I know there's advertising, but I mean, if everybody's behind you, and everybody's sort of fired up, then presumably they'll do their volunteering for nothing.
Yeah.
I mean. I've never really understood why. I mean, maybe I'm just being naive. I've never understood why all these political candidates are so in hock to their donors. Because I mean, what has the money gone to? Why have they needed the money?
Right. Yeah. It's going to the political. It's going to the Democratic National. It's going to the actual political parties and their lobbyists. And it's a whole system that has to be paid off. Everybody needs their cut, I guess. It's incredibly vile. The whole system is just.
I mean, it's probably more in your face. I mean, I'm sure the same thing happens over here, but it used to be one of the things about this country is that we used to think, and probably with some justification, that it was a lot less corrupt than most countries, but I don't think that's the case anymore. I really don't think that's the case anymore. I mean, the COVID thing, there was all sorts of, you probably had the same sort of scandals over there of people, there were people who were running, there was somebody who was running, a company that had 6 people in it, and they managed to get a government contract, which brought the owners in £2 billion.
Yeah.
£2 billion.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they've no experience in making this stuff.
No.
But they knew a government minister. And so that was that.
It's not who you know. It's not what you know, it's who you know. Our federal government started a program. It was they called the PPO or something like that anyway, where small to save small businesses from shutting down, they were supposed to get a loan that I don't even think they had to pay the government back. They were supposed to get a pretty big chunk of sum of cash to help these small businesses out, and come to find out, small businesses didn't get them, but huge corporations did.
Yeah.
All you had to do is file the correct paperwork, and you got it.
Yeah.
And it takes me back to, I'm sure that they did it up like the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy about demolishing Arthur Dent's house. Well, we put it out, and we put a public notice, and but it was downstairs in a basement 5 floors down.
Yeah. And we didn't receive a reply. Yeah. So there you go.
Yeah, exactly. So you're going to tear your house down. So like I said, nobody's going to come to save you. If and I've been saying this for years, and I feel like a bit of a hypocrite because I've not been practicing what I preach enough. It's going to be the mayor of your city. It's going to be your school council. It's going to be your city council. Those are going to be the people that directly affect your life. And when it comes to statewide, federal level, or even state level bureaucrats, it's not going to affect your life that much. Now, with the exception of your COVID lockdowns, or your BLM riots. And that was my biggest come to Jesus moment, was after billions of damage was done with BLM and COVID lockdowns and all this. I thought surely that would wake America up in mass to get something done. No.
People are very stubborn in their beliefs that everything's going to be all right.
There's all kinds of bread and circuses for us to stay distracted, you know.
I think there's also this thing called normality bias as well.
Yep.
You heard of this, where people, and it's all right now. It's been all right for as long as I can remember.
Yeah.
It's always going to be all right.
Right. But when you take the education system and they don't really teach history, they don't really teach that. Okay, well, we had the what is it? The Great Society and the Great New Deal and everything that FDR did that really set everything on its head when it comes to the way we really should be able to govern ourselves. And that goes back 100 years. We don't teach that anymore. So people don't have a frame of reference to think, well, hold on, the IRS and we've always paid income tax. Well, no, we've only paid income tax for about 80 years, 100 years. Yeah. And guess what? Before then, we had roads. Yeah. we had everything we have now, but we weren't getting, my paycheck wasn't getting, financially raped every week.
Yeah.
So, but it, like I said, I'm torn between whether or not I'm torn between being really angry and frustrated about everything. But I always end up feeling like, I'm the old man screaming at the sky, shaking his fist at the clouds, because it's really not going to come much of anything. So I have to bring myself back down to the ground, make sure that the wife is happy. I'm happy. I'm doing great at my job, and it's just kind of plugging along as well as I can.
You have to sort of live your day-to-day life as if there will be a tomorrow.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there is, I think our age demographic is crucial, actually.
Yeah.
Because I think that the people who are older than us are of no consequence now, because, much of them are just too old to do anything. And also as well, people that are older than us are the boomers, aren't they? And perhaps they're the people who've allowed everything to get so shit.
Yep.
But then there's the people younger than us, that they don't remember what the world was like.
Yeah. Before the internet, before cell phone.
And people don't, particularly in this country, and we're really bad for that, is that people don't know what it's like not to live under surveillance. People don't feel like they're under surveillance, and they go about their business as if they still are free.
Yeah.
But they're not.
No.
And there's surveillance everywhere. Yeah.
And traffic cameras would be the one issue, and I've seen a few of them around. But the second I start seeing more and more of them around, that might actually be the impetus for me to get locally involved politically, because I remember just a couple of years ago, it was more than a few years ago, when the camera started going up in London, and I was taken aback about it. It was just a guy walking down the street going, "There's a camera there, there's a camera there, there's a camera there, there's a camera there," and I'm like, I was talking to, and this is probably 20 years ago. I was talking to a good buddy of mine, and he said, "Oh, I don't mind the cameras as long as they're not doing audio recordings." And I went, "Well, why would that make a difference?" "Well, they couldn't hear what I would be talking about." I go, "Well, okay, they could lip read, and who's to say if they're going to slap a camera, oh, it's just a camera. We're supposed to trust them. It doesn't have a microphone on it, Come on."
And guess what?
But
they got microphones on them now.
Yeah. So, the camel's nose, once it goes in the tent, it's going to go all the way in the tent. So,
we had, I don't know the state of it at the moment. I think maybe it's all backed off, or maybe it's not being reported. But we had these characters called the Blade Runners in
Yes,
London who
yes,
were down on the cameras. Now they've been pretty prolific. I mean, they've done a lot of good.
yes.
Shall I say? But I had to go into London this last week for a couple of days. We went in my colleague's van, and it's a new van, newish van.
Okay. Yeah.
So it's what they call ULEZ compliant.
Right.
ULEZ being the ultra low emission zone.
Yep.
And, you know, we were chatting as we were going up there, and my colleague was sort of forlornly saying that he thought it'd all run out of steam and they weren't doing anything anymore. But we went up there, and out of the 5 cameras we saw, 4 of them have been disabled. You know, so that's 4 of them. You know, but it needs to be 5. You know,
yeah.
because,
Oh yeah.
Because his number plate was captured by the 5th one. You know, it's, you know, and you know, I mean, the thing about the ULEZ thing is that I've kind of hoped would, and I think it has done in a way, is it's made people think about surveillance in a way they haven't thought about it before, because it's something that directly affects them. Suddenly, every time they go into London, they've got to pay £12.50. You know, every time. You know, and people who do shift work, sort of at night, they've often got to pay it twice. You know, so it's £25 a day. Yeah. Depending on when their shift finishes. And so I had heard that people were, you know, there was a group of blokes, they were taking down a ULEZ camera, and then he went after another camera, and the person said, one of the person said, "Don't worry about it, it's not a ULEZ." He said, "Fuck that, it's coming down anyway." You know.
Good.
So you know, so that's
let that ripple.
Yeah, that's what I want to hear. You know, that is what I want to hear. So, but our horrid, nasty little mayor of London, a guy called Sadiq Khan, he's up for re-election this year, and it will be a catastrophe if he gets in again. You know, he may well get in again, because with a name like Khan, he is popular with a certain demographic. If you get my drift. Yeah. A popular and increasing demographic in London. So that's how he's got elected the last couple of times, and you know, it's probably why he might well get elected again the next time. But so I don't know what's going to happen about that. We'll have to see. But you know, of course, we've got general election coming in. It hasn't been announced yet. I think this it's usually in May, or general elections are in May. But it hasn't been announced yet. I mean, it might have been. I mean, because I'm on Twitter and not reading newspapers, you know, I don't know. But but we have to have it by December, because we have to have it every 5 years, and the last one was December 2019. So, but you know, we've got this thing where, you know, we've got, you know, an entrenched uniparty, you know, but the Conservative Party at the moment, despite having an 80-seat majority, are now more unpopular than any government has ever been, I think. And so that the consensus seems to be that the Conservative Party will get annihilated. Unfortunately, they'll get annihilated by the Labour Party. Now, as far as I'm concerned, what needs to happen is the Conservative Party needs to be destroyed, because it's almost like Conservative Party itself is almost like controlled opposition, even though they project themselves as being a right-wing party. They're no such thing. They're a far left party, you know, but they're not as far left as Labour, you know. So they have to be destroyed first, and then Labour will come in, and it will be a disaster. It will be absolute catastrophe, and then hopefully they'll get destroyed again, you know, as well. And then out of the rubble, something good might come of it. But I don't know.
Yeah. The Republicans are the same way. They're supposed to be right wing. They're supposed to be the opposition to leftist madness, and you know, they're not. when election time comes around, they'll rattle on about how much they're against abortion or whatever leftist talking point they want. But the leftist bills are still getting passed. They're not, they allow more, they'll bitch and moan, but that's it. They have no spine. I'm more mad at the Republicans than I am the Democrats. The Democrats have taken their mask off, physically, literally, and metaphorically years ago. So at least they're honest about the evil that they want to perpetrate. Republicans talk a good game, and shit still happens. They're spineless, and I can't stand them.
It makes no difference, does it? They make no difference.
No, not a bit of difference.
I mean, I don't know this, but how many times have the Republicans shrunk the state?
None.
Yeah, I bet it's zero. I bet it's never.
Exactly. I can count on one hand the number of representatives, senators, federal level employees that I would trust. One of them being Thomas Massey, and he walks around with a pen that has the national debt in real time.
Oh, really?
Trillions. Yeah. And he's a great man. What's that?
I've looked at the debt clock. It's a bit scary.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. It's obscene is what it is. But Massey's incredible. He 10, 12 years ago, he purchased an old Tesla car battery and repurposed it for his house, and he runs his house off of it. He's got solar panels and he's got a windmill, that's the way. If you want to do renewables and stuff like that, that's the way to do it. And he's very tech savvy. He's a few years younger than us, and he keeps getting elected. Thank God.
Where is he? Where does he represent?
Tennessee, Kentucky, maybe. In the Appalachia somewhere. I think I should know that. I think Kentucky. But he's a good guy, and he's one of few that, because it's the second you get elected, you think, okay, I'm going to go in and I'm going to change the system. It's the whole, what's his name, Mr. So-and-so goes to Washington thing with James Stewart. But you get sucked in, because the second you get elected, you have to start working on your reelection campaign, which means sucking up to the donors and sucking up to the lobbyists and
delivering on favors.
Yeah, and building political capital. But if I've come to the conclusion of anything, is the solution is not political. The solution of what we're going through on an everyday basis, rank and file, blue collar workers like you and me, politics is not going to be the solution. It's going to be talking to your neighbor. Oh, by the way, before I forget, thank you for the Christmas card. Yeah, it's going to be interpersonal relationships with your neighbor, with your coworkers, with people at your church. It's going to be localized. That's how you're going to be able to improve your life. And then, because
do you think we do that enough?
The people that we should want representing us, they're too smart. They're like, I'm not going to dirty my hands with that vile system. And I don't blame them. You don't see me running for office. I wouldn't want to do it too. But we need to have an environment. We have to make it to where people that should be in power, we should make it more appealing,
I think, certainly. I think that, whether or not this is true in reality, being a political representative is an important job.
It should be
an important job. Our MPs are paid £80,000 a year, which is a good wage.
Okay.
But it's not fantastic.
Right.
It's not fantastic. But they do get extremely generous expenses.
Okay.
And the expenses is where all the corruption comes in.
Yeah.
And Margaret Thatcher, to her detriment, was one of the people who muddied the waters there, because it's never popular to give MPs a pay rise for obvious reasons. So she said, well, we won't have a pay rise, but we'll just give you more and more expenses. Yeah. And so that is the thing that has been that's the thing that has been sort of milked all this time.
Yeah.
But and often MPs, they're on boards of companies and they do other things, and they're executive boards, and and they do other things when they're supposed to be representing their constituents,
Right.
But so what should happen, I think, is that maybe they should be paid, I don't know, 150,000 a year, but their expenses are worked out by someone else.
Yep.
So somebody from the north of Scotland gets more expenses than someone who lives in Westminster,
Right.
So and none of this second homes, they all, because they need a second home in London and all the rest of it. And so there's all sorts of corruption and freeloading with that kind of stuff.
Right. Every representative, either House or Senate, senator in America here, they have apartments and condos in DC.
Yeah.
No, I'm sorry.
So what I've been able to have is, where the Houses of Parliament are, if you look out over the river and you look across Westminster Bridge diagonally, there's a building there that used to be called the Greater London Council. It was a council building for London, and it got repurposed and flogged off, and now it's hotels and stuff like that. But that would be a really good building in which you could have, and it could be extended, is you could have suites for each MP, and that's where they live when they're in London. So it's well defended, and it's all there, and they have suites. So if they have family, they can, it's not a little rabbit hutch, but they all have that. But there's no other jobs. Your expenses are worked out by someone else, and I would also say that you also ought to have a 2-term maximum.
Thank you. Yes. Here in America, term limits and shorter sessions of Congress. Back in the day, a politician would get elected, but he would be a farmer, right? And that's his full-time job. He's a farmer. But 3 weeks out of the year, he would go to DC. It would hash out some laws, preferably not hash out any more new laws because we have too many of them as is. Anyway, they conduct their political business in about a month and then go home and look eye to eye to the people that voted for them and do his real job. There are too many politicians, federal level top politicians that used to make 100,000 a year. They get elected, and within a year or two, they're millionaires.
Yeah.
Oh, well, okay. How did that happen? Term limits, and that anybody that gets elected, in fact, I would even go anybody that gets elected from a state level or a federal level, it's illegal for them to go be a lobbyist anywhere else or go, I think there are already laws in the books about working for another foreign company or anything like that. But once you've served your terms, once you've served, I'm thinking, 2 terms, I go maybe 3 terms for a House of Representative. That's more ground level, and only 2 terms for a senator. And then you have to go home or you go elsewhere, but you can't go work for Raytheon or, BlackRock or anybody like that.
I think they could also do, just to make it, one of the things that they could do as well is that, if you become an MP or a congressman or something, that should be your total focus while you're doing it. That's what should be total focus. You don't have to do insane hours. Just do it a 9 to 5, a solid 9 to 5. That's what you're doing. And if you're somebody, I think also as well is that we ought to choose these people by random, like jury service.
Oh, okay.
So you just pluck people off the street, or you're not doing that now. And if somebody's got a successful business, then say, right, okay, well, you can make your case that it's so successful you don't believe it. Okay, then we'll go for someone else. Or if you can't make that case enough, then we'll say, right, the state put some people in there to nursemaid it while you're in there. And also the state also sets up a sort of pension for you. for when
Okay.
you come out of your term, so you're not left at the end bereft, and worse off than you started. But
Right.
but I'm shouting pie in the sky stuff here, but it's just
Yeah. No, I've heard that. I forget who had a quote that they said that they would rather have random people out of the Boston phone book elected than most of the people, because if you're seeking power, there's a character flaw right there. If you want people in power that don't want it, but there's an old paradox right there. That's not.
But you have to in the pill, don't you, to make it like, I don't want to do this stupid, boring, administrative job, but I'll do it if you pay me enough. Right. But all of this unofficial, suddenly you're suddenly on the board for Boeing and stuff like that, it's just, the whole thing stinks to high heaven, but it's what's going on at the border now? What's the shenanigans with Texas National Guard? And
it's really hard to tell, in my opinion, because everybody keeps talking about a very small portion of the border. And you mentioned we have a border that's thousands of miles long, but all the media, both independent media and mass media, are overly focused on this 20-mile stretch of the border, and maybe rightfully so, because that might be the only place where the state level between the Texans and the actual federal agencies are going nose to nose there. The last I heard of, and it's been a week or two since I've looked into it, they wanted to the governor of Texas and the attorney general, Abbott and Paxton, they were trying to close the border in this one, I think it's a nature preserve, some type of park, and they put up a wall, and they even put razor wire on floats across the river because it's right up against the Rio Grande. And the federal Biden and all his infinite wisdom told I think the EPA, anyway, told one of his lackeys to take down the razor wire. So they took down the razor wire. Well, Abbott put it back up, and last I heard, Abbott, the governor of Texas, has brought down their National Guard to guard the border. They put the razor wire back up, and they've closed the wall. And that's all fine and good. I'm glad to see somebody actually stepping up. Abbott, though, you got to watch him. He says a lot of things and then does the exact opposite a year or two later. He waffles quite a bit. He knows he has a very strong right-leaning part of his population, but at the same time, you still have the cities of Houston, Dallas, Austin, San Antonio, incredibly liberal, incredibly blue. So he's trying to keep everybody happy at the same time, like every good politician does. And all that is a moot point until, from Brownsville all the way to San Diego, California, all that needs to be completely shut down. And I'd have no problem in it, and might be my one little authoritarian streak in me. I would have no problem whatsoever if we shut the whole border down and no immigrants at all for the next 5 years, just to shuffle the deck, just to figure out what the 10 million, 12 million illegal aliens that have gotten in now, just to see who we're dealing with, and then deport their asses out.
Well, we've got exactly the same. It's uncannily similar what's happening here, because we've got this. Like in 2022, that we had gross immigration, 1.2 million people. Okay. Now, it's been running at least 250,000 people every year since 1997. That's another 5 or 6 million people in all that. And if that wasn't bad enough, last year, 1.4 million.
Yeah. And y'all's population, we have a population of 330 million.
Yeah.
Y'all's population is half that, if not less. So
Well, I mean, some people have even suggested it might be as high as £100 million because 100 million people because nobody knows. You know, like 2021 was supposedly the last census. We get a census every 10 years,
Right.
and for some reason, about which I dare not speculate, they decided they're not going to do any more census.
Yeah. No need. No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we've got this, and one of the things that is that, and this is what I fear about the people not waking up soon enough, is that the longer it goes on, the uglier it will get when people do finally wake up. Because what we're having now, I've noticed there's certain commentators who have been making quite, fairly principled stands against mass immigration.
Yeah.
But then some of them now are morphing into something which is a lot nastier. They're saying things like, which is which is an argument I've never really liked. Have you ever heard the argument if a horse, if a dog's born in a stable, it doesn't make it a horse? You heard that?
No.
Well, basically, what it's basically saying is if you've got a black person, and I follow quite a lot of black people who are desperately patriotic for this country, and stand up for things, and they're not nutcases, and they've got their own critiques about immigration as well, but the longer it goes on, the more it's going to just be, that bloke looks different from me.
Yeah.
Let's get him.
Yeah.
And
well, it can turn nasty very quickly here too.
Yeah, because you've got all the normal people. I mean, I say this. I mean, it's a ridiculous anecdote in a way because in a way it doesn't mean anything. But I remember going last time I took my car to London. I had to pay fucking £12.50 to do it, which was it was probably 18 months ago. I had to go to a place called Blackheath, which is close to central London.
Mm-hmm.
And we went to this hotel, and the hotel, in sort of ridiculous fashion, it's a great big hotel, it had 6 car parking spaces. So they said, well, you can't park here because they're all full up. So they said, go into Blackheath, and after a certain time, you have yellow lines on the road. So if you have a single yellow line, after 6 p.m, you can park there.
Okay.
And you can't be sure these days because the parking is so draconian. And I parked up, and this guy came and parked up behind me, and he got out of his car, and and he was a black fella, and I just said to him, look, can we park here? Is it all right to park here? And he said, well, I've been parking here, it's fine, and this shouldn't matter. The next bit of detail shouldn't matter. But out of the passenger side, got his wife, and she was a white woman, or his girlfriend or whatever, and it was just, just noticed that, and there's nothing about it. And then the bloke starts asking me about my car. He goes, oh, that's nice, it's like, and we had a normal conversation between normal human beings.
Right.
And the fact that he was black and I was white and his girlfriend was white, none of that made any fucking difference. And and the thing is, the reason that is interesting was because that was normal 15 years ago.
Yeah.
No. And I mean, it's still normal now, but I fear that the way things are going, that might not be normal in another 5 years. People be looking over their shoulder at each other, looking at each other with suspicion, and it's all this mass immigration which is causing this, because it doesn't seem to make any difference what anybody does. More people come here. It doesn't matter what happens. If ever there's a conflict anywhere in the world, it means more refugees, or they call them refugees, more migrants come here. And this is what people have been saying about the Israel-Palestine thing. And like I say, I'm not interested in taking a side on that. But it seems to be that some people say, well, if you support the Israelis, that means there'll be more refugees, so more migrants will come here. And then if you support the Palestinians, that means that the Palestinians will feel that that this is a safe haven, so more more migrants will come here. So whatever way you cut it, more migrants come here. It's like death and taxes. You know, it's death, taxes, and immigration. They're the things that never change. You know, and you know it's just frustrating, and I do fear for, you know, just ordinary people. Ordinary people who aren't white, who've got white girlfriends or husbands or whatever it is, or black husbands or whatever it is. You know, just normal, ordinary people, and they're going to get caught up in the crossfire of all this shit. You know, it does. It does worry me. You know, because there are people who, 10 years ago I wouldn't even have considered talking to. You know, people that might describe themselves as white nationalists and things like that. But now I think, they've got a point. They've got these points, and you've got to listen to them. And just because you don't listen to them doesn't mean that it's not valid, the things that they're saying.
Right.
And, British people have got a right to a homeland the same as anyone else, So, in all of this stuff, and of course, you could imagine, it's feasible to imagine that this is all part of the plan. To cause strife, cause division, set people against each other, and then the excuse comes, well, you lot can't behave yourself, so we've all got martial law and everyone's, so
shuts it away, right?
But I mean, I don't think we're there yet, but
it's to add more to the chaos.
Yeah.
There's a top-down obvious agenda to keep us scared and unaware of really what's going on, and then you shove millions of people from a different culture, from a different environment, and God bless them. I would love to be able to take care of everybody, but you can't take care of everybody. With the illegal immigration, can you imagine somebody that spent years, that filed all the proper paperwork, right? And got in line and did everything they were supposed to become a citizen, how they feel like, well, God, I could have just waited 2 years and come under the razor wire for free, and done it that way. So
it's like, it's like people who, all you've got to do to get into the UK now is go to France, go to Calais, get in a rubber boat and turn up on the beach, and you'll get taken off to a 4-star hotel, given money, given a phone, and you just have to step over the military veterans on the way into the hotel. I mean, it's astonishing how this stuff is so obviously immoral, and wrong in almost every way, and yet it carries on. There's a company called Serco here, and it was, until recently, it was run by the grandson of Winston Churchill, no less.
Okay.
And you'd like to think that the grandson of Winston Churchill, that might have been a bit of a chip off the old block, but no, not at all. No. He was dead against Brexit, for instance. And Serco have got the contract to house all these migrants.
I've heard something a little bit about this. Yeah. So is this the company taking over the hotels and the houses?
Yeah. So it's hotels for the moment. There are also, there's also little rumours and little bits of news you hear about them saying, if somebody's got a house and it's a bit derelict, or if they've got another house, live in a house, they own another house, and if it's not really taken care of, there's things that they can say is a compulsory purchase, or not even purchase. They could just fucking take it. And this is a way of, it's an attack on private property, apart from anything else. Now, I'm not a big fan of landlords, people who own loads and loads of houses, because you've got loads. It means somebody else can't have one. But I think you could probably, if you're a couple and you've got 3 children, you know, and you've got the money to buy 3 more houses and you rent them out. You know, you could have maybe those 3 houses. It's because if anything shit hits the fan, you could house your own children, you know, as they grow up or whatever it is. You know, maybe there's that. You know, you could do that. But I'm not a fan of people who have, you know, 75 different properties, you know, and so what ends up happening as well is that the taxpayer ends up paying the mortgages on all those extra houses for them.
Right.
You know, it's and of course when it comes to people like BlackRock, and in this country, Lloyd's Bank is doing the same thing. They're buying up all this property above market value, and then renting it back to the people that might have bought it in the first place. You know, thereby not being able to participate in the property owning democracy or the American dream. You know. So yeah, I don't know. It's I don't know what's going to happen. You know, I know we haven't come up with many solutions today, but
no. Well,
we have to sort of thrash out the problems first, don't we? But I think your idea about the localism is key.
Yeah.
And I was a local parish councillor for a while, and it is deadly dull. It really is. But we have to, you know, for the sake of saving our countries, I think we should endure a bit of boredom, I think.
Right. In my hopes of dealing locally, it might ripple outwards, you know, to gain a bigger sphere of influence. That's my hope. You know, and at the end of the day, I hope to retire in about 9 or 10 years here. Hopefully before the robots take over, you know. And yeah, I'm a driver, so when it comes to autonomous driving systems now, that doesn't make me very happy. You know,
I don't think that's as close as they think. Do you think it's that close?
I think it's closer, because every time they say, okay, well, such and such technology is 20 years away, it pops up in 10, you know, and then when you onboard artificial intelligence, and even what's more scary is Google general artificial intelligence, I think is the name of it. It just speeds up everything exponentially. Walmart has got a fleet of 250 self-driving big trucks. Now they have a human co-pilot in the cab, but the majority of the highway driving is done by the computer.
Yeah.
Which blows me away.
Yeah.
So they're working on it, and I'm all for innovation. Trust me, I love the new things. I just don't want my paycheck taken from it, you know, by it right now. And like I said, I just want to get out while I can. You know, a lot of people are railing against AI and all the onslaught of the new tech that's coming up the pike, because it's going to take jobs away. Well, you know, the invention of the car, I'm sure the people that rode horses and the carriages that they would haul, I'm sure that they were mad because they were out of a job. But we adapt, we overcome, we learn, we overcome, and we adapt. And I have no problem with that. Just not until I can retire.
Yeah.
That's one thing I'm really good at, and I've been doing it for almost 20 years. You know, come on, don't take that away from me yet. So
yeah. I don't know. Yeah, it's funny because the local thing, what you were saying, and I bought a book secondhand because I didn't want to buy it off him. I bought a book about George Soros.
Okay.
Now, because I wanted to see if I could get into his mind a bit to see, because he is one of the bogeymen on our side, isn't he? And Elon Musk was saying that, you know, he says that you don't have to rig the presidency or the election or, you know, or senators or anything. You've got to do it locally. You know, it does seem as if, you know, I don't know if this is certain, but it does seem as if that he is suspected of being behind all of these people that selectively let violent murderers on bail, and then other people who don't fit that demographic, shall we say,
Yeah.
are denied bail, like the bloke in New York who the curly head blonde guy who
Yeah.
he was denied. You know, his bail was set at $300,000 or something, and someone who did the same thing but wasn't of the same demography was let out. You know, and
Right.
that happens all the time. And it does seem as if, I mean, does it happen all the time, or is I'm just always focusing on the things that I'm sent? It does seem to. You know?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, we've had pro-Palestinian marches almost every weekend for 3 months now,
Right. That
and
just go up organically, I'm sure.
yeah,
Just
yeah.
oh, it's just yeah, I'm sure they.
Yeah,
I'm
it's funny
sure.
because on October the 8th, the day after the original attack, there was hundreds
Yeah.
of thousands of them out. They all had Palestinian flags. They all had their placards. They were all ready to go. Surprisingly
Right.
enough, you know,
Maybe
on
having
the
the
day
same
after.
T-shirts,
Yeah.
or yeah.
But for instance, there was a guy who was an Iranian, you know, and obviously, judging by his age, he's probably one of those Iranians. I don't think I've ever met an Iranian who didn't leave Iran in 1979. You
Yeah.
know, I
Yeah.
think every Iranian I've ever met has left Iran in 1979, and he looked old enough to be one of those guys. And you know, he just turned up with a sign saying Hamas are terrorists,
I saw
and
that,
yeah,
and he
and
got arrested.
and the police arrested him.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
this happens all the time. It happens all the
Yeah.
time. There was some bloke who was flying a Union Jack. He got arrested because they're the way they phrase it. The police says they always use the same phrase. He was inflaming tensions.
Yeah. Right. Right. Yes. And the mobs throwing the bricks aren't.
No,
So
exactly.
yeah.
Yeah. So,
Keep in mind, at least here in America, um, keep in mind that the education system has been compromised. It has been for 20, 30 years now, at least. And it's been injected with this um, intersectionality, DEI kind of stuff, where we've been training teachers. We've been training kids that go to in public school, and then they grow up, and then they're told that to have a good job, you're going to have to go to college. Well, you go to college, and then you get even further indoctrinated into wokeism or intersectionality or feminism or whatever titles you want to put it on, where it's not about equality, it's about equity, and everything's a power struggle. The oppressed and the oppressor, mindset. Well, then they go get a job to become a lawyer, and those lawyers end up being judges, and
yeah.
it just dominoes from there. And what we're doing is we've lost control of the public, and they're not public schools; they're government schools.
Mm.
They sold their soul off so long ago that we're reaping the benefits of all that institutional bullshit from decades ago. Hence, you get guys that are released without bail, as opposed to some that aren't.
Yeah.
And constant, um, yeah, yeah. And
You
like
get,
what you said earlier, I'm not sure if it's just happening more often or if it's just that I'm noticing it more.
Hmm.
A good example of that is I don't trust internet reviews, whether it's a movie or a restaurant or anything like that, because inevitably you're gonna end up with more negative reviews, because somebody who had a great time at a restaurant, I'm not going to go on their website and say I had a great meal and the waiter was fantastic. It's always going to be the people that had the fly in their soup, So those are the ones you're going to notice. I have no doubt, and I've seen evidence of it myself locally back in Texas, of the education system not teaching history, not teaching the basics, math. We still our education system is sadly corrupted.
Well,
Instead of
maths is
reading,
racist, isn't it? Isn't maths racist?
what's
Math,
that?
isn't mathematics racist now? Is it? Yeah.
That's I wouldn't doubt it. Yeah, yeah. It's everything's racist now, and everything's transphobic. Um, luckily, parents have responded with homeschooling is up like 200% since
Oh, that's
COVID,
good. Yeah, yeah,
and
that's good.
so I'm hoping that some sanity will be saved through all the the bullshit that gets thrown around. Yeah, if you don't know where you come from, you don't know where you stand today, though. You don't know how bad it really could be. And we've had a plethora of luxury beliefs that, oh, yeah, it's really bad in New York, but it'll never happen down here in the South. Oh, it's really bad over there, but no, we're better people than that. I'm sorry, we're all humans.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
we're not near as rational as we think we are. So you just got to be careful.
I mean, so as far as that goes, I mean, one of my great unrealized ambitions was I wanted to take a drive across the US, the Great American Road Trip.
Yeah.
And I did start it, but for reasons I won't go into, I didn't finish it, and I had to come home. But I was thinking that maybe it would be nice if I could do it on my 60th, round about my 60th, which is only in another 3 and a bit years,
Yeah. Yeah.
But I'm beginning to wonder if America's still going to be there in 3 years. I mean, how is this? Marjorie Taylor Greene and people like that were talking about a separation. I mean, and it does appear that the gulf between places like Texas and California, is almost unbridgeable. It seems
unreconcilable. Yeah. I could foresee it seeing, and maybe this is a good subject for a different video, but I could definitely foresee it breaking off regionally. New England and New York.
Yeah.
And, it could be one little province or state or whatever you want to call it. You got the South, and you got the crazies out west. Something's going to have to happen because, and people aren't there yet. We've already discussed that and agree on that. They're not there yet, but it would be very easy to see how people would get to the point to where they're sick and tired of having people that hate you run your life.
Yeah.
And I'll take a page out of Michael Malice. If you don't follow him on Twitter, you should. Michael Malice is a constant white pill for me, because he constantly reminds me that our enemies are not smart people. They're idiots. They have power. They have control of media, most of the corporations, Hollywood, yada yada. But they are not smart people at all. So it's a matter of surrounding yourself with like-minded people, which goes back to localization,
Yeah.
And I have no idea. I did find out an interesting piece of information, because there's a Texit movement it's been around for quite some time, but it's starting to catch fire, thanks to the I think it's Eagle Pass is the name of this park.
Eagle Pass, that's it. Yeah.
It's gotten a little traction, and I need to look that up. They had gotten enough signatures for it to go to Austin, the state capital, to be put to a vote on whether or not we could put that in our constitution, I think, and possibly break away from the Union. Well, Texas is home up in the Panhandle, and I bookmarked the website. I'll have to look it up again. They're home to the only facility that makes refurbishes and destroys nuclear warheads.
Ah, yeah,
So,
yeah.
and of course, it's a combination of state and federally ran. But I've found it interesting that we've only got one facility that actually makes our warheads. You would think we'd have some out in Nevada. You would think we kind of
Yeah.
have them all over the place, but no, it's in little old Texas. So
Yeah. Well, Texas is Texas could do it, couldn't it? Texas could go independent. It's I
yeah,
think it's more likely for Texas than for anywhere else. Texas
yes,
is it's a big country, it's a big state, it's got a big population, it's got
big
4 or
population,
5.
lots of resources. I think it boils down to whether or not the federal government will allow it.
Yeah.
Because they still have quite a lot of federal. I'm not sure if NASA is entirely in Florida now, but at one time NASA had a huge facility or whatever you would want to call it in Houston, presence in Houston. Dallas does have a branch of the Federal Reserve. Now, mind you, I have to correct myself. That has nothing to do with the federal government. It just has the name federal in its name.
Yeah. It's
But
not
anyway,
federal, it doesn't have any reserves. Yeah.
No, it's not federal, and it doesn't reserve a damn thing. So I mean, as any state, it has a huge federal presence. It's whether or not the Texans are willing to stand up to the feds or not. And God knows, I don't want a drop of bloodshed. I'm hoping I don't want any violence whatsoever. There's got to be a way that we can amicably separate, and I'd have no problem with that whatsoever. I have faith in Texans. I have faith in my neighbors. I have faith in myself and those that I know. I have no faith of anybody that has power in DC or Austin or any of these other places.
What do you sort of do you believe in the sort of idea of predictive programming?
Give me a definition of it.
Well,
sure.
it'll become apparent. There's this new film coming out, isn't there? Civil War. Have you heard about this?
Oh, I've heard of it. I've not seen a trailer or anything.
Well, you should watch a trailer, and I wonder if you believe predictive programming is a thing.
Okay.
Which is a way of kind of softening people up for an idea to yet to come.
Oh, I definitely agree. I don't agree with that, but I agree that it exists. Yes. Yes.
Yeah. And so this, I mean, it does look like, from an entertainment point of view, it does look like quite a good film. Curiously, in the trailer, Texas and California appear to be on the same side, which is a bit odd, but but other than that, but certainly right. they're against the eastern side.
Okay, I believe I've seen a map, maybe on Twitter, that's got the different regions of the futuristic, of what you're talking about, yeah.
But I mean, it really would be something, wouldn't it, if it was, if America was to break up? I mean, it seems inconceivable, but it also seems inconceivable that Texans would ever have anything in common with New Yorkers, or Californians. I mean, right. I'm getting this impression from across the other side of the Atlantic. I don't know what it's like on the ground, but which is kind of why I'm talking to you, really, because to see if I'm getting the right messages here or not.
Right. Well, I tell you, here's something I didn't think we would talk about, but it fits. There is now, for years down here in the South, there's always been people complaining about all the Yankees that moved down here.
Oh yeah.
And I'm hearing it more and more, and I'm hearing it louder and louder now. And it might be harder for a Texas to break off because you've got a huge, and see, in these New Yorkers and these guys from Philly and Ohio and places like that, they move down here and they bring their politics and their culture with them, right? Which makes no sense whatsoever. No, if I lived in New York Now, mind you, maybe they're moving for a better job, and God bless them for that. But you got you have to assimilate. So over and above, we're having to deal with illegal immigrants that don't want to assimilate. We have citizens that will come down here and don't want to assimilate into the culture, because we're taking high trust societies and turning them into low trust societies. You know.
Yeah. Yeah, I suppose they come. Apart from anything else, they probably come down here because maybe property is so much more expensive in New York than it is. I mean, I don't know about Ohio, but certainly if you've got a place in Manhattan, you know.
Right. And God bless them, because I moved 5 or 6 states over.
Yeah.
You know, for a number of reasons that I can't go into right now, but yeah. Now, mobility is awesome. That's great. Don't go trying to change the culture on us, though. You know,
it is weird, isn't it? It is weird the way people do such things. You know, they just think, well, I'm going to move to this place where I know that everybody else doesn't think the same as me.
Right.
And I'm going to try and make them change.
You know? Right. They just haven't seen the light yet. I'll show them the light. God.
Well, I mean, I don't. I mean, I suppose I might have had a bit more faith in that the local good old boys and the rednecks would convert them. You know, here, have a gun. You know.
Right. Have a beer, have a gun.
Yeah, have a barbecue. This is my get rid of that. Get rid of that foreign car and get yourself a pickup. You know.
Right.
And before 5 years later, they're wearing cowboy boots and they're Stetson. You know, but but maybe I'm being a bit optimistic. Right.
Now, I don't know. Like I said, and regardless of what happens, if we were to break off into, five different countries or 50, we're still good people at heart. We're a bit on the lazy side, a bit on the obese side. We've lost our edge, and we need to get our edge back.
I think that is true. Actually, I think we're the same over here.
Yeah,
and it's not surprising because it's been a deliberate demoralization.
Yeah.
I mean, if you think about it, our societies and American society in particular, in just 250 years has achieved astonishing things. And the downside, of course, is that empires typically last 250 years.
200 years, right. Don't get me started about dismantling the American empire. I had to have no problem whatsoever of pulling all of our military bases out of Europe and Asia, bringing all our boys home, getting our finger out of the pies of everything, and just worrying about, if we would just do that and just worry about our North America, and Alaska and Hawaii. In fact, let's get rid of those two. No, hold on. Alaska's got lots of oil anyway. But yeah, if we would just mind our own business for a generation or two, I think that would improve things massively.
Yeah, I did read somewhere, I how true it is, that America has 800 US bases. 800?
Yeah.
I mean, fuck me, how much does that cost?
I know. Well, when you can print money out of thin air, it doesn't cost a thing, really.
Yeah.
As long as you have a population that's working, feeding the monster, you can do that. Yeah. What's the British I think it was an old British TV show with two guys in German circa 1940s uniforms and leaning over and says, "Are we the baddies?"
Yeah. Are we the baddies? Yeah.
Okay, not the American people. The American federal government are the baddies.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, you have citizens, you have people here in America that don't know that aren't aware that. Well, hold on. Had we not been, and I know you don't want to get into it, but had we not been funding all these foreign countries, half of what's going on in the Middle East, wouldn't be happening.
Yeah.
George Washington in his inaugural speech said, "Entangling alliances, avoid political parties and entangling alliances. If we just listened to good old George,
Yeah.
half of our problems would be gone. So
yeah. I mean, it is. Yeah, I mean, I do. I mean, I'm not making a sort of anti-American point here, but you just, illustrated it. Is that, and I think this is also true for my country. Is that the country is not the same as the state.
yes, right.
And
that's how I talk about Ukraine, Israel, all of them.
Yeah.
People of Israel love them to death.
Yeah.
Ukrainians love them to death. It's those in power. It's the state, exactly.
And the American state it appears to be out of control. It does appear to be out of control.
It is the largest. I look at it. It's the largest corporation in the world that ever existed.
Yeah.
When you talk about the military-industrial complex, when you talk about the surveillance state, when you talk about the CIA, FBI, you name it, it is global. And we have satellites. We're massive, and we shouldn't be that big. We should not have that much power. I'd have no problem. I wish we'd quit being the damn world's policeman. Britain used to be the naval superpower of the world. We are now. Y'all take it back. I'm done with it.
Yeah.
I'm so tired of it all. Sending our men, our boys and our girls off to die on foreign lands for no good reason.
Yeah. Yeah. It is. Yeah. I mean, when I think about, how much 800 military bases must cost. I mean, it must be in the trillions.
And those are the only ones that we know about.
Yeah.
I bet it's double that, if not triple that, of the ones that actually exist that are off the books.
Yeah. I mean, all that money. What could all that money do for Americans? I mean, that's being spent over there.
I know it'd be a new renaissance.
Yeah.
We could end world hunger if we really wanted to. We could do a lot of incredibly good things, but we don't, because those in power don't, can't make a buck off of it or something. I don't know. And I'm a dyed-in-the-wool capitalist. You can make an honest buck, make an honest buck. This isn't honest,
So what do you think's going to, do you think Trump's he's going to win next time?
It depends if they'll let him win. Yeah.
So long as he's not in jail by then.
Allowed to win, because they're gonna fortify this election again. If he's allowed to win, yes. Whether or not it's a good thing, it's still to be seen. I don't think Biden is even going to make it to November. He's still going to be with us. I'm not predicting anything heinous or anything like that, but I think he's going to be substituted for a different Democrat. And then you got JFK over here going to muck up the works. It's going to be glorious chaos. I really look forward to it. And Trump will probably get in if he's allowed. And whether or not he surrounds himself with better people, because that was my biggest complaint with his term, was he was the one that he allowed Fauci to do what Fauci did. He allowed Powell and John Bolton and a bunch of really bad actors do some really bad things, and he should have known better, or at least asked around and asked more questions. But with Trump, it's about he is a narcissist.
Yeah.
From that,
it's the ego, isn't it? This is the problem.
It's all ego with him, and not to say he doesn't have principles or he hasn't done good things. Yes, he's done amazing things, but it has to placate his ego, So I don't know. I think to answer your long take way too long to answer your question. Yeah, I think Trump will probably win it, and we'll kind of go from there. Now, are you familiar with the actress Roseanne Barr? You remember the Roseanne show back in the day?
Yeah, Mrs. X listens to her podcast quite a bit, actually.
Oh, that's good. Okay, did you see the one with Michael Malice?
I think I saw some of it. Yeah, I think it was some of it.
That's the one. They made a $10,000 bet Roseanne is predicting there will not be a 2024 election at all.
Right.
Because shit's going to hit the fan before then.
Yeah.
And Michael's like, yeah, no, we're not there yet. You know, and he as cynical as a second generation Russian can be, Michael Malice is a real white pill. In fact, I bought his new book, and it's on the stack of other books that I haven't gotten around to read yet. But he, as cynical as he is, I love following him and paying attention to what he says, because it reminds me it could be 1,000 times worse, and maybe this is what we can do to avoid it, you know. So
yeah, okay, well that's a positive note to end on, I think. So yeah, so thanks for the nice chat. We'll do this again next month,
sounds
and
good.
we'll keep an eye on things and see how this shit show is going to pan out.
Exactly. Keep going. Blade Runners, keep doing it, man. Keep doing it. Y'all are giving me hope over here with the Blade Runners. So
yeah.
So,
all right,
yeah,
mate. Well, I'll pass that on if I come across them. Yeah.
Will do.
Okay, mate.
Take care, man.
Take it easy. All right,
You
mate.
too.
See ya.
Bye.